Thank you for joining us for this video from Grow and Give, a modern victory garden project. Grow and Give will help you learn to grow food, share the harvest, and keep it local. The following video was taken from an excerpt from a live webinar on protecting the garden from animals. In this short video, Carol Amara from Boulder County Extension will teach you about squirrels.
Not every animal that is enjoying your garden has actually been invited to the feast. I know we do put a lot of plantings out there because a garden that has life is something that is really enjoyable. But sometimes the animals and the birds that are visiting our gardens can be a little destructive. And what you need to do is have a plan in place so that you can protect your garden when they turn from cute and fluffy and nice to watch into some kind of marauding raiders that are going to be having a big impact on your garden. And I'm going to start off with my personal nemesis, squirrels. Anybody that knows me has heard me talk about my running battle with the squirrels in my property. We have a person in the neighborhood that feeds them, and we no longer have any predators around. We used to have a lot of eagles and hawks, and we had fox and that sort of thing here, but no longer. We've had a lot of settlement build up around. So we have a lot of squirrels, and they can be incredibly destructive. As you see this squirrel here, in winter and spring on a lot of the thin bark trees, they will strip the bark from the tree and just do some chewing. There's been a lot of discussion around whether or not this is for nutritional value or if it's just out of sheer boredom, and nobody has a real answer for us. I know in spring, they'll nip off and discard the growing tips of spruce trees, and they'll do that by the hundreds of buds that they've bitten off. It's not that they go down to eat them then, they just seem to find it entertaining to nip these buds off. So in our gardens, squirrels typically think that this is their pantry and we're the interlopers. I'm going to point out the squirrel here on the right-hand side, the one that's sitting on the fence and eating the decapitated top of one of my sunflowers. This is my squirrel nemesis, and it is taken at my house. They get into everything. They get into my squashes and pumpkins, and they will eat them out so that I can't have any kind of a nice Halloween display or any kind of my pie pumpkins because they're eating that. They'll get up in my raised beds and they'll be digging for all the peanuts that the neighbor gave them the previous fall. They can't remember where they put them, but they start digging around and they're kicking all these plants out. So I have a running battle with them. And then when my white oak tree in the front undergoes a mast year, in other words, it produces an exorbitant amount of acorns, which it does about once every 5 years. All the squirrels come into the yard, and they often engage in amusing activity of throwing the acorns at me. So I've learned to try and, control these animals. So repellents are a good thing to start with. Repellents can be something that is based on scent, it can be based on taste, or it can be based on some kind of a physical action, like using a sprinkler system to try and drive these animals away. The hot pepper flakes you can sprinkle around your crops, and that might help you keep them from digging. In ornamental beds, there are some pretty good, really effective products available that are a combination of peppers that you can sprinkle around, and it really keeps them out of bulb plantings or ornamental beds and that sort of thing. It's extremely effective, but it can't be used in our vegetable gardens. So the crushed red pepper flakes will be useful. One of the more amusing ones is the motion activated sprinklers. Now this is something that is set up on your hose, and they might look like a little crow or something, and you set it so that it detects motion and it'll ratchet around and it will focus on that particular animal and shoot a jet of water at them to startle them away. I personally know how effective these can be because I've run into them on lawn checks when we go onto someone's property and they forgot that they still have their motion activated sprinkler system engaged. And so, I know that it will hit its target. One of the problems with this about squirrels, though, is that they rapidly learn to put something between themselves and the sprinkler, like a tree or some other object that they can sneak up and around and try to outwit the sprinkler itself. A master gardener up in Wyoming shared with me that she has a lot of success in tricking squirrels. What she does, because the squirrels, I don't know if you grow tomatoes and have a problem with squirrels, but what they'll do is they'll pick a ripe tomato and they'll take it and they will take one, maybe two bites out of it. And then to taunt the gardener, they will hurl it to the ground and they will leave the fruits of your labor that have been desecrated, I say, lying there, and you are left with this kind of a tomato that's gone south. Well, what this gardener does is she's saved the red Christmas tree ornaments and she hangs them around her tomato plants early in the season. So the squirrels go up thinking that they're going to get a nice meal. And what happens is they can't fight through it. So she trains them not to eat her ripening tomatoes, because by the time they start coming on and turning red, the squirrels don't believe what they're seeing. I don't know if this is based in science, and I am going to use that disclaimer here, because scent also comes into play when animals are browsing on some of our food plants out there. So what does it come down to? It comes down to exclusion. Exclusion is the best option. So if you can put some kind of caging around individual plants that they're plaguing, that is really helpful. I know that for me, I started out for a couple of years having a lot of success in caging off my pumpkins and winter squash. And I would take a cage that was made out of chicken wire. We use big peony rings in order to create this. So I'd use the peony rings and I'd cover it with chicken wire and it would slide down over the little pumpkin so that the pumpkin could grow and ripen without the squirrels being able to press that mesh against it, not that way. So you could try that. As time wore on, the squirrels learned to go after the vines, however. And so I had to take to putting netting over the beds themselves. And then they figured out how to push up under it. And so I ended up with full enclosures. This is a problem. The netting that you have to use, the mesh that you have to use, as you can see on the left, the chicken wire, which is about a 1-inch size, is good to keep the squirrels out. It has to come all the way to the ground, or these animals will push under it, or they will try to squeeze through any available opening. This is an image. The top photograph is an image from my house. This is what I was eventually reduced to doing, is develop these little tunnels of chicken wire that I would close off the ends. And I would have to use a little scoochie cart to go through there, as I tended the garden, or the squash and the pumpkin plants that were under it. However, there is another solution that will actually give us double duty, 2 benefits. And that's what you can see on the lower photograph. That's a shade barrier cloth. This is an image of shade barrier being used down in the Rocky Ford research area. And it does double duty. First of all, it will provide shade that we're finding more and more with research a lot of our food crops need, such as your tomato plants. University of Maryland did some research work on this, as well as out of Georgia. And the tomato plants benefit from about a 25% shade barrier. Peppers and that sort of thing also benefit from this. And if you tack it down to the ground like you see here, it acts as the netting as well. So that's another good means for benefiting both your plantings and giving them the shade they need. Now for trees, On trees, if you want to try to protect it, I'm going to circle back to those repellents that are based on taste, and the hot pepper ones that you can get at the store that you can paint onto the lower branches can be effective for protecting the trees.
Thank you for joining us for this short video on how to protect your garden from animals. To find more resources from CSU Extension, visit our Extension website at extension.colostate.edu. Here you can search our publications under the Natural Resources category to find more about wildlife. Here you'll find links to Plant Talk articles, which are short and to the point, CSU fact sheets, as well as Master Gardener curriculum. All of these resources are here to help you grow better.